Good afternoon. We're going to get right into the articles today because there's a lot, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to get through all of them. Feel free to check out the description. This is Read-Along. I read all the liberationnews.org articles. Feel free to support the cause. Donate to liberationnews.org. Link is in the description. Link to the articles is also in the description. Otherwise, let's move along here. All right, first article for today titled New Rising Tensions in Horn of Africa, What is Happening Between Ethiopia and Somalia by Deja Gaston and Eugene Purrier, September 30th, 2024. All right. I have a little bit of allergies, so you might see me sneeze or turn off the camera to blow my nose once in a while. I'm allergic to the trees in my area, and it's fall season, so all the leaves are falling, so it doesn't help. Anyways, all right. So the photo is Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed at the Memorandum of Understanding signing with Somaliland. Credit Facebook Ethiopian News Agency. The article reads as follows. Tensions are rising after Somalia recently accused neighboring Ethiopia of supplying weapons to the breakaway region. Excuse me. There it goes. Region Puntland, a state in the northeastern part of Somalia, as the two nations spar over an ongoing territorial dispute brought on by Ethiopia signing a 50-year deal with Somaliland, the breakaway region of Somalia, to establish a naval base and commercial port along 12 miles of its Red Sea coast. Somalia has denounced the deal as an attack on its sovereignty and territorial integrity with Ethiopia, while Ethiopia has argued securing a seaport is critical for the economic development of the landlocked country. These developments are affecting the broader region, with Egypt forging alliances with Somalia as part of its own dispute with Ethiopia over how to harness the power of the Nile River. Both issues have injected new tensions into the Horn of Africa, which for several years has dealt with regional instability, civil wars, sanctions, proxy wars, stemming from contradictions of Africa's struggle against neocolonialism. Ethiopia's deal to access a Red Sea port in Somaliland. Ethiopia's deal to access a Red Sea port in Somaliland. At the beginning of this year, Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and Somaliland President Muse Bihi Abdi signed a memorandum of understanding securing a 50-year lease that grants port access to the Red Sea. The MoU gives Ethiopia an outlet to maritime power and commercial ports in exchange for Ethiopia's support to recognize Somaliland as an independent state. In a televised speech back in October 2023, Ahmed laid the question of Red Sea access as an, quote, existential issue, end quote, alleging that commercial access to ports in several neighboring countries was not enough to secure sustainable economic growth. This reveals that the issue is not access to seaports in general, but over the terms of trade. Ethiopia is prioritizing access to seaports where it has dominance and power projection into a vital global waterway. For Somalia, which has been dealing with a sort of, quote, balkanization, end quote, since 1991, Ethiopia's move seriously raises the possibility of the dismemberment of the country, which has led them to strengthen alliances with Eritrea, Turkey, and most notably Egypt. Egypt has an ongoing dispute with Ethiopia regarding the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, a vast hydroelectric dam built between 2011 and 2023. Egypt, Ethiopia, and Sudan for several years have engaged in negotiations over how to balance the water needs of all three countries with the major development potential of the dam. but have yet to find a resolution. Ethiopia has moved forward with operationalizing the dam, pointing to the dire need for poverty alleviation and the lack of evidence of major impacts on regional agriculture. Egypt openly criticized the MOU signed between Ethiopia and Somaliland and has proposed sending 10,000 troops to Somalia, with half joining an African Union peacekeeping force and the other half deploying under a bilateral agreement with Somalia's capital, Mogadishu. Additionally, Egypt delivered weaponry to Somalia, including anti-aircraft guns and artillery, on September 22nd. This heightens tensions by raising the potential of Egypt's troops on the Ethiopian border in the midst of dispute where Egypt had previously alluded to potential military action. Eliminating regional instability and building cooperation. The Horn of Africa and the broader Nile Basin sit at the crossroads of global commerce and contain great human and material resources. Western imperialist powers, since the 19th century, have sought to colonize and control the Horn. In the 21st century, the same powers have the same interests. Regional elites are creating openings for exploitation by outside interests, especially U.S. imperialism, by pursuing power politics over shared dialogue. The possibility of significant poverty alleviation and development can only be rooted in the complementary complementarity of the various Horn Nile Basin nations. Only a politics based on building unity and mutually beneficial cooperation can deliver the potential of the Horn of Africa and its people. Regionally, Eritrea is the main voice for this sort of vision, earning, sanction, earning sanctions and isolation maneuvers from the U.S. Whether the Horn of Africa can find greater unity, given its location and riches, will contribute significantly to whether or not U.S. imperialism can maintain its stranglehold on the global deep into another century. All right, let me pause that right there and be right back so I can at least blow my nose. All right, I'm back. All right. So my opinion on the article is, it definitely takes Western imperialism. It doesn't help uh, control these situations or negotiations. What they go in there and divide and conquer, right? Keep them dividing so that they stay poor and their resources keep getting stolen, practically, bought dirt cheap. Um, they get exploited, and they create division amongst each other. Um, these smaller developing nations or countries, they definitely need to align with each other. Uh, and that's the other issue, right? There's definitely plenty of resources for them if they were to use them correctly, if they were to share them, if they were to use like a community type mentality in a broader sense around the countries there. But they're always divided, and their real division is not within the people themselves; it's within the ruling class. The ruling class are the ones always dividing them because they want to be able to uh, create a system that is capitalist that will create profit margins for the ruling class at the expense of the poor. And that is always the issue. That's always the issue in all developing countries, unless they have a strong social or communist backbone to them or structure to them, which can only be brought upon by the people themselves. Um, so hopefully, what will happen in the long term is that they'll share the dam power uh, between each other to redistribute to the energy to what they find necessary for their regions. Hopefully, they'll find a peace treaty where they can share the ports um, and create a balanced trade, right? But that only happens through cooperation, which is usually more common through socialist or communist programs, not capitalist programs. That's just the way it is. Capitalism does not shake your hand or do anything for you unless unless the capitalist has a for-profit motive. Uh, so nobody's going to go in there and save them and help them. That's a capitalist uh, if they do not find a profitable system. So what they do is they go in there, they divide and conquer, and then they extract the resources. They steal the resources and call it a good deal for them, right? And this was what the Western Empire has been doing for the last century, and this is the kind of thing that BRICS is against. Uh, BRICS isn't perfect, but it does create a buffer against the hostile way that the Western Empire treats these countries, right, or influences these countries to go on all-out wars or tribe wars instead of collaborating with each other and benefiting the people themselves and not just the ruling class. All right, that's my thoughts on that. Let's move along to the next article. I'll try to get through these as quickly as possible. I know I started a little late. I usually start around noon. But there's a lot of articles today. It's been a busy week for Liberation News, and rightfully so, right? There's just a lot of bad things happening around the world, and it's hard to keep up and be informed in all of it. But as you become informed with all these articles, you start to see the pattern, and the logical pattern is that it really is greed and power. It really is the ruling class against the working class, and the working class being that we outnumber the ruling class by 99% and over. We should be the ones making the decisions that benefit us, not letting a handful of billionaires uh, make choices that are ruining the future for everybody. And they don't care, obviously, as a ruling class because they have mansions, they have suites, they have bunker castles under the ground. All right. So the next one here, Hurricane Helene. Article titled Hurricane Helene, a Capitalist Disaster by Brian Perez Canto and Miles Wetherington, October 2nd, 2024. The article reads as follows. Hurricanes are often portrayed as natural disasters, but the level of destruction and human loss reflects the economic system present in the impacted locale. In societies building socialism, where the well-being of the people is the principal concern of the state, preventative measures are taken to minimize destruction and facilitate and excuse me to minimize destruction and fatalities. In capitalist societies, the state is beholden to private industry and maximizing profit is the driving force. We can see this play out before, during, and after every single natural disaster that affects our communities here in the United States. Hurricane Helene is one example among multitudes. Capitalism intensifies natural disasters. It is now known that natural disasters such as hurricanes, droughts, floods, and wildfires are becoming more severe and more frequent as a result of climate change. Hurricane Helene dumped 31 inches of rain in some cities of southern Appalachia, a rainfall event that happens on average only once every 1,000 years. As a result, dams are overflowing and are at risk of failure. Entire communities have been decimated with no access to clean drinking water or electricity, and towns have become completely isolated from the outside world as part of Interstate 40 broke off into the river. It will be some time before we know the true extent of the damage and loss of human life. The most disturbing aspect of this is that we have just entered hurricane season and the future years are projected to only intensify. Compounding the issue is how capitalism alters the natural landscape. Forests and wetlands are great at absorbing water. However, they are terrible for producing wealth. When land is commodity that can be bought and sold, forests are cleared to make way for parking lots, rooftops, and non-native grasses. The effect is that rain runs off directly into creeks and rivers, exacerbating the effects of floods. Contrast this with China's now famous, quote, sponge cities, end quote, an urban planning model developed with a landscape ecology perspective designed to manage flooding by strengthening the presence of natural ecosystems within the urban areas, which acts as a sponge in absorbing surplus rainwater. The ruling class abandoned the people. In Georgia, even when flooding was not present, communities across the state were badly affected by Helene. A common theme among people we interviewed was the way private housing complexes completely abandoned their tenants in a time of need. Quote, management told us to go to a hotel. Not everyone has money to just get up and move, end quote, said Kenneth Springer, a Park Valley resident, when asked about the response by the apartment complex. Quote, we need some type of commitment from management to make sure our well-beings will be taken care of, end quote. Elsewhere in Clarkston, residents of the Woodside Village apartment complex interviewed Saturday evening had been out of power for nearly 3 days, recalling the way the apartment complex handled preparations for the hurricane. Hazan, a tenant, explained how management simply left a memo on everyone's car saying that tenants were likely to lose power and that they should contact Georgia Power. Despite receiving an email from Georgia Power assuring residents that power would be back by 11:45 a.m. on Saturday, at the time of the interview at 4 p.m., the entire complex was still without power and Georgia Power teams were nowhere to be seen. The situation had become so dire that tenants began collecting twigs and branches left around the complex in order to cook, recounted Hassan. Quote, they don't check, they don't talk to anyone. The government neither, end quote, said Takiba, another tenant on Woodside Village, when asked about how the hurricane was handled. Under the unplanned economic system that is capitalism, people are left to fend for themselves during natural disasters. There is no centralized planning to ensure that everyone has safe transportation and shelter. Instead, people use the limited resources they have to support their neighbors. There are countless stories of working class people providing one another with what limited supplies and support they have to share. For instance, Bishop Marvin Brown, a native of Dublin, Georgia, spent his entire Saturday helping his community by cutting away at fallen trees and branches with his chainsaw and checking in on his neighbors. Socialism is able to adequately respond to disasters. In contrast, Cuba, a country which has suffered over 6 decades under U.S. economic blockade, the, ineffic- the, ineffic- excuse me, the inefficacy of U.S. capitalism becomes even more striking. In the early years following the Cuban Revolution, the socialist government, in response to hurricanes which had always devastated the small island country, established a civil defense system in order to track hurricanes, educate the population, quickly distribute communications, and assist in evacuations when needed. In fact, all adults in Cuba must undergo a civilian defense training program that is designed to teach them how to assist in evacuation procedures. To this day, the result speaks for themselves. In 2004, Hurricane Jeanne hit the Caribbean intensely, killing 3,000 people in Haiti, devastating infrastructure and leaving the Haitian people stranded without food, water, and electricity. In Cuba, 0 lives were lost. Unlike the Cuban people who liberated themselves of Spanish colonialism, and then U.S. neocolonialism through their socialist revolution in 1959, the Haitian people continue to suffer under the yoke of U.S. imperialism. Disasters expose the priorities of the ruling class. The U.S. government is massively funded, employing millions of people with the military deployed all over the world to protect imperialist interests. Under a socialist government, where the people's needs are placed before profits, the U.S. military could be deployed to help with restoration efforts after disasters. While nominally that is the duty of the National Guard, hurricanes over the years have shown restoration to be woefully inadequate. In China, during the COVID pandemic, police officers distributed food as people quarantined. Following Hurricane Helene, police in the U.S. were deployed to supermarkets to stop, quote, looters, end quote. People have been arrested for taking food and resources they need to survive while capitalists are free to price gouge working class people in the times of crisis. Working class bails out the rich. Following the aftermath of the disaster, it will ultimately be working class people who have to pay for the damage. Since insurance companies under capitalism are intended to make a profit, they are incentivized to distribute as little financial relief as possible. Instead, people must rely on personal donations to recoup a fraction of their losses. Under a socialist system, the for profit insurance industry would be abolished. Financial relief would be distributed based on need and if required. New housing would be provided for people if their homes are no longer livable. Rather than prioritizing rebuilding failing infrastructures, the U.S. government is rather than prioritize rebuilding failing infrastructure, the U.S. government is sending tens of billions of dollars to Israel to continue the genocide of Palestine. Even as Israel is recklessly expanding the conflict into a potential regional war by launching airstrikes in Beirut, the U.S. government last week agreed to send an $8.7 billion military aid package to Israel. For the earth to live, capitalism must die. Studies have shown that human-induced climate change has already caused irreversible damage to the planet. Unless the capitalist system is overturned, the ruling class will continue to lead us to environmental destruction and abandon working class people along the way. While Hurricane Helene might have been unavoidable, the over 120 deaths could have been prevented with a centralized response. To mitigate the destruction of natural disasters, we must stop prioritizing profit over the environment and needs of the people. Only socialism provides a path forward to properly address climate change. All right. Yeah, these articles, I mean, they're pretty short, but they're very descriptive in what the main message is, and it's supported by facts. Usually, they support these facts with creating the hyperlinks to the articles that they're getting their resources from. Uh, And you can also deep dive yourself for it. There's always plenty of search systems out there to search for the truth. Um, but yeah, this is the main issue with capitalism. It will reward the most ghoulish people at the expense of the working class. It will reward the ruling class at the expense of the working class, because the ruling class just care about making more money, and they don't care how many people have to die for it. They really don't. To them, humanity, the working class, are expendable because we can always make more human beings, right? Uh, so we're talking about 4,000 billionaires in the world ruining humanity for everybody. And why we as human beings listen to these clowns or follow them is speaks to the human element, that we all are easily propagandized or brainwashed if we are not taught or given the tools at a young age to have critical thinking skills and to have a good moral base, instead of capitalism, which just it just prepares everybody and propagandizes people at a young age from elementary school to be loyal to a system, to a flag, to a nation, and not to a working class or to the humanity itself, right? So we have to be able to deconstruct this for people and be able to show them with articles such as this how capitalism does not work. All right. So that's all I'm going to say on this article. I'm going to keep my analysis or my end comments short today because I want to try to get through all of these. I don't like falling behind. Let me check the audio again. Audio check 1, 2, 3. All righty. So fall is my favorite season, right? And I always use it as an excuse. Now, I'm not a supporter of like chain coffee shops or cafes. Once in a while, I'll try to walk into a mom and pop uh, cafe to buy a coffee or some kind of coffee drink, caffeinated drink, whether it's tea or coffee. But uh, usually, I just make my tea or my coffee at home, and I'm fine with that. I think I think that's more gratifying at a personal level. But it's fall and it's pumpkin spice season, and what I'm drinking today is uh, uh, chai chai tea, chai spice tea, but with some pumpkin spice oats creamer, and it's delicious. So not only is it good for my throat, because unfortunately my throat gets a little parched easily, probably from all the heavy karaoke days back in my earlier years. Anyway, so there's a picture here. I'm going to read the article heading for this next article: From Media to Policy, the West's History of Demonizing Haitians. It's by Nato Kuri, October 2nd, 2024. The description to the picture is a cartoon from 1821 of Henry Christophe, a leader in the Haitian Revolution and later king, in front of the monarchies of the Holy Alliance. The credit goes to the trustees of the British Museum. It seems like there's a bullet wound in his head and he's bleeding, but he's still fighting. All right. And the article reads as follows. Springfield, Ohio has become a flashpoint due to a xenophobic and racist remark made by the former President Donald Trump during a recent presidential debate, where he falsely claimed that Haitian immigrants in the city were taking people's pets and eating them. The Haitian immigrant community in the region has grown significantly, with thousands settling there, many through the Temporary Protected Status Program. Despite most Haitian residents in the United States legally, the community has faced safety concerns, including anonymous bomb threats leading to the shutdown of schools, hospitals, and the municipal center. Use of fear-mongering against Haitian immigrants is not unique to the Republicans or Democrats. It is part of a long legacy of racism and xenophobia towards the Haitian people. The Western media has historically played a role in perpetuating racist stereotypes about Haitians, dating back to Haitians' independence in 1804. Media demonization and the plot to sabotage Haiti. Historians have yet to fully address the plot to wreck Haiti that began soon after independence. Since the Haitian Revolution started in 1791, local and foreign actors committed to capitalist and imperialist domination have worked to prevent Haiti from becoming a truly independent, sovereign nation that serves the interests of its people. Haiti's injustices and the role of imperialist countries like the US and France in perpetuating them have been hidden from public view for centuries. The ruling class and Western media have obscured the true history of the Haitian people, depicting the revolution as a dangerous uprising that must be suppressed rather than a struggle for freedom and equality. The portrayal of the Haitian people as violent and brutal justified the continuation, excuse me, the portrayal of the Haitian people as violent and brutal justified the continuation of colonial exploitation and hoped to discourage similar uprisings among other enslaved people from around the Caribbean region, other European colonies, and within the US itself. The media's portrayal also reinforced racialized narratives that dehumanized the revolutionaries, presenting them as incapable of self-governance and maintaining a stable society without colonial oversight. The Western media sought to discredit the revolutionary ideals of equality and anti-imperialism that threatened the interests of the colonial powers by emphasizing chaos and disorder. An embargo was also imposed on the new nation, cutting it off from international trade. In 1806, the U.S. declared a blockade on Haiti and at the request of Napoleon's Foreign Affairs Minister, Charles Maurice Périgord. Périgord's letter to his envoy in Washington depicts the intentional sabotage. Quote, the federal government should adopt severe measures to prevent all sorts of communication between a civilized nation and savage people who, through their ferocious manners, barbarians no less, are strange to the system of civilization, end quote, Périgord noted. Quote, moreover, end quote, he continued, quote, they don't threaten France's security only, but also the security of all the European colonies and those of the United States, end quote. The Southern members of the U.S. Congress, aware of Haiti's influence, the threat it posted, and the message it sent to its enslaved population, banned the use of the word, quote, Haiti, end quote, in the Capitol building. It took almost 60 years for the U.S. to recognize Haiti's independence in 1862. The campaign escalated in 1825. On orders of the French King Charles X, a fleet sailed to Port-au-Prince, ready to reduce the Haitian capital into ashes if President Jean-Pierre Boyer refused to sign that Haiti owed France 150 million francs, equivalent to about $21 billion in today's dollars. This demonization and plot to isolate Haiti from the rest of the world was not just an attack on Haiti, but a broader ideological weapon used to uphold the dominant mode of slavery and colonialism. Haiti served as a hope and a warning. The caricatures below show how Haitians were depicted in the world. Picture description goes as follows. U.S. President Martin Van Buren receives a Haitian diplomat in Washington, D.C. The Haitian ambassador is ridiculed, and his dialogue mocks African American English of the 19th century. A little more descriptive of this picture is how they also make the Haitian ambassador look like a monkey wearing clothes. They literally have a sword coming out of his butt to make it look like a tail. They have his whole body figure exaggerated to make it look like he's an animal, like an orangutan, like he's overly long arms. His head is like twice as big as the head of the other two in the picture. Um, Almost looks like a ridiculous squirrel picture. It's really, it's so racist and so insulting. Anyways, let me move on to the article. Oh, well, here's another picture and the picture description. Emperor of Haiti, Faustin Soluk, plunges a European journalist into a cauldron for criticizing his administration. Again, it's an exaggerating animal kind of look drawing of the Haitian, and they make the journalist look like an innocent skinny Jew or something like that, and it make it look like the Haitian is trying to cook him. He's gonna eat him. I think this is one more picture. Here in this picture, uh, this one's in color. The description is Suzanne Simone Baptiste Louverture, the wife of Haitian General Toussaint Louverture, being pulled apart by British soldiers. Uh, so this is another exaggeration. The way they animalize Haitian people here, the soldiers not only are using weapons to pull her apart, but they're doing it in a form that is that it does it's meant to display that they're not being aggressive, but that they're struggling to pull her apart because she is such a strong animal, for say, right? That she is not human, subhuman, but in an animalistic way. uh, so it's very insulting. The picture is very demeaning. It's meant it's literally bullying. uh, it's kind of like what if your parents don't teach you well, it's kind of what you do as a kid when you want to make fun of people, right? You make these absurd pictures of them and act like a tool without regarding their feelings. um, but let's see here. Let's move along to the article. And the article reads as follows. uh, Racist immigration policies against Haitians. The increasing immigrant population from Haiti and Springfield can be seen as a result of the impact of global capitalism, economic challenges, and political instability in Haiti, often worsened by imperialist interventions and extreme exploitation, have led thousands to seek better opportunities in places like Springfield. Over the past century plus, Haitians have found their country unlivable as the US and other imperialist countries continue to feel both physical and economic violence in Haiti to this day. Haitians have been immigrating to the US in significant numbers since the 1970s. They often fled Haiti by boat, where they were derogatorily, excuse me, it's a hard word, where they were derogatorily labeled, quote, boat people, end quote. They were escaping the harsh dictatorship led by Francois and Jean-Claude Duvalier, who killed tens of thousands of people and imprisoned and tortured many more. Haitian refugees fleeing the dictatorship were typically met with arrest, imprisonment, denial of asylum, and immediate expulsion. Due to rampant anti-communism, the U.S. supported the Haitian government under Duvalier while simultaneously undermining and delegitimizing the Cuban government under Fidel Castro. This foreign policy dictated immigration policy, resulting in Cuban refugees being encouraged to come to the U.S. while Haitian refugees were being denied this amnesty. Multiple U.S. presidents pursued these immigration policies because of American anti-Haitian bigotry that saw Haitian immigrants as a threat based on a combination of racism, nationalism, xenophobia, and misconception that Haitians carried disease at higher numbers than other nationalities. Many Haitians do reach the shores of the U.S., but it's estimated that thousands die at sea during the journey. Before 1981, all Haitian arrivals in the U.S. were detained, and if they were not considered political refugees, were sent back to Haiti. After 1981, all Haitian refugees intercepted by the U.S. Coast Guard were immediately sent back to Haiti. Following the 1991 overthrow of the democratically elected president of Haiti, Jean-Bertrand Aristide, by the U.S. and the persecution of his supporters by the military government, around 40,000 Haitians attempted to sail to the U.S. Many were detained at Guantanamo Bay, where they were held for at least 6 months. The conditions were deplorable, with a severe lack of supplies. Many refugees slept on cardboard or bare ground, and others stayed on cots. In 2010, Guantanamo was once again designated as a potential holding cell for Haitian refugees from that year's disastrous earthquake, which killed more than 200,000 people. While a significant exodus of people did not happen as a deterrence measure, U.S. Air Force planes made daily flights for 5 hours a day over the ruined country, broadcasting a message in Creole from Raymond Joseph, the Haitian ambassador to the U.S. Quote, "If you think you will reach the U.S. and all the doors will be wide open to you, that's not at all the case." End quote. Additionally, 33 U.S. Naval and Coast Guard vessels served as offshore hospitals and helicopter landing pads, primarily for relief and evacuation purposes, but also functioning as floating barriers to contain potential waves of immigrants pushing offshore. In 2021, the images of men on horseback with long reins corralling and whipping Haitian asylum seekers trying to cross into the U.S. from Mexico once again confirmed the long history of anti-Blackness and anti-Haitian sentiment that exists in the U.S. immigration policies. For the few Haitian immigrants who manage to enter the U.S., they must contend with systemic racism in the American criminal legal system and brutality of U.S. policing, and that has been endemic for people from across the African diaspora. Haitians and other black migrants routinely face structural barriers to legally entering and living in the U.S., often enduring disproportionate contact with the American criminal legal system that can jeopardize their residency or hasten the deportation. Haitians as a nationality account for one of the highest rates of asylum seekers, with the lowest rate of acceptance, according to an analysis of data from the Associated Press. According to this study, between 2018 and 2021, only 4.62% of Haitian asylum seekers were granted asylum by the U.S., the lowest rate among 84 groups of whom data is available. The Haitian Revolution continues. Haiti, with its revolution that started over 200 years ago, remains unfinished, has long captured the West's attention, though rarely for the right reasons. The nation has long been a victim of foreign intervention, coups, blockades, and crippling loan that led the country to be a victim of underdevelopment. Western imperialism has studied Haiti quite well and learned to disguise its tactics in a more sophisticated, covert way. Rather than overt rollback, they learned to disguise their continuous counter-revolution in Haiti behind, quote, the electoral process, end quote, and, quote, international community assistance, end quote. The broader historical treatment of Haitian immigrants reflects a long-standing pattern of racist and xenophobic narratives, from the demonization of the Haitian Revolution to discriminatory immigration policies. These actions are not isolated incidents, but part of a broader strategy to undermine and marginalize Haitian people. While Haiti continues to pay the price for daring to free itself, the spirit of the Haitian people remains unbroken. All right. So that is a good article and summary on what's happening in Haiti and juxtaposing it with the way American policy treats Cuba, right? It is very important to understand that Haitians are inept, that they are very capable of governing their own land if they weren't thrown a wrench in the gears every few years through American policies. And if Haitians are coming to America, as they should be welcomed, uh, I have no issue with Haitian peoples, as I have no issue with any type of minority. I do not find myself superior or inferior to anyone. This is this is a logic that goes into philosophy as well as egalitarianism, right? The psychology that we must all treat each other as one, as of equal value, whether it's the worst or the best among us. Uh, if we try to move aside our egos and our bias and see everybody as equal, then it is not only beneficial to the community as a whole, but to ourselves, because we are never going through that mental struggle of trying to process whether we're better than someone or lesser than someone, or if certain people are worse than others. No, we are all human beings. Living through the human condition, and where we end up has a lot to do with not only decisions that we made, but decisions that were made for us, and things that and the environments that influenced us, right? Uh, so in this perspective, uh, when people have issues with immigrants, it's like, why? Are you not doing okay? And if you're not doing okay, do you really think it's the immigrants' fault and that they're lesser than you and that they should not come here and they should not work here and they should not date your children or they should not be part of your family because they're a lesser type of human, they're a subhuman? They're not. They're equal human beings just like everybody else around the world, right? So uh, if America steals their resources and keeps exploiting them and keeps ruining their own sovereignty, their own independence of Haiti, uh, then yeah, all Haitians have every right to come to America, whether it's legal or through other means, and try to get their bread. I'm not gonna try to moralize the unjust rules of immigration or the unjust policies of this Western Empire uh, and say that, oh, they should come through legal means. No, not going to justify uh, sending people back to starve to death. If most people struggle to come here, leave their land, leave their culture, they're not coming here uh, just to be thieves. They're coming here because they see an opportunity to survive. They're not coming here to eat your cats and dogs. And this is like a horrible mentality. This is exactly what's the problem with uh, a lot of Trump's policies or thought process, and a lot of his supporters that are so badly perhaps lacked nurture or lacked lessons of empathy or core lessons of how to be good, decent human beings, that they go along with them. And the same goes with Democrats too. They go along with these ideas that immigrants are bad or Haitians are bad or Venezuelans are bad. It's like, what? What are you talking about? These are human beings that are trying to survive, you know. And to me, I have no interest in strengthening the borders. My interest is more in strengthening egalitarian policies around the world to let people live and find their own sovereignty, find their own independence in their own countries. You know, instead of building walls, we should be building bridges. It's literally building bridges across nations and trading goods fairly of equal value, right? Um, but that's not what we do here at the Western Empire. What we do is, like I said, we alienate, we villainize, we call people subhuman, and then we steal their resources. We exploit them, just the same way that America did when when the Pilgrims landed through the last few centuries, using slavery, using genocide of the indigenous people here, calling them subhuman, calling them animals because they didn't want to live the way that Europeans lived. Uh, It's insulting and it's gross. I mean, what is more inhumane? What is more morally unjust? What is more subhuman than actually uh, the process of genocide, of wanting to erase a whole race just so you can take their land when there was plenty? All right, so that's my thoughts on that. Like I said, I'm going to move on. I hope that wasn't too long of a thought process, of an analysis. I have to also emphasize that uh, Liberation News does a great job at doing a summary analysis at the end. So I don't really have to do a long one, maybe add a few sentences to it on my thought process. But that's it. Let's see, Hurricane Helene, from media to policy, the West history of demonizing Haitians. So, okay. So from media policy, the West's history of demonizing Haitian. Okay. Okay. So the next article is solidarity to the Haitian community of Springfield, Ohio, which was like one day later. All right. So this is kind of like an add-on article to it, to be more focused on what's happening in Springfield, Ohio. Uh, Let me add on to this whole like eating your cats and dogs nonsense. It's like, dude, if you don't care, uh, it's so funny how people try to uh, try to create these moral values, right? Like eating someone's cat is bad, but eating someone's cow is good, or eating someone's bacon is good. It's like you're gonna see someone, even if Haitians had that kind of culture perhaps in their island. It's not my place to say that they're horrible for it. Uh, it's their culture. Perhaps with better education, they would develop a better system of food. I'm not saying, like I said, I'm not saying they're subhuman for perhaps doing those practices or perhaps doing it out of need because they're starving in some places. Uh, but a lot of Americans here try to create some kind of level of like this animal is worth eating, this animal is not worth eating because it's a cat and it sleeps on my bed all the time. It's like stop, dude. You're a carnivore. You're eating animals you don't need to eat. You're nowhere above anyone else around the world. If you want to be morally based and say that no one should eat cats, then agree that no one should eat animals, period, and you don't have to eat animals at all. All right? Don't feel superior because you don't eat what other people eat. That's just it's absurdity. Um, all right, but that was a little tangent off of that issue. Let me continue to this article here. Oh, let me check my audio too. Uh, let's see here. Test audio is all good. Don't need to do the whole show. All right, so in this picture, the title heading is Solidarity to the Haitian Community of Springfield, Ohio. Article by Party for Socialism and Liberation, Columbus, Ohio, October 3rd, 2024. The picture is of protesters saying U.S. respect Haitians, sovereignty, no U.S. invasion of Haiti. Okay. Photo description, a rally in Brooklyn protesting against U.S. interventions in Haiti. It's a liberation photo. Article reads as follows. In early September, a Facebook user posted a false claim arguing that Haitian immigrants in Springfield, Ohio were eating pets and waterfowl. This false claim turned into a national political point when Trump repeated it to 67 million people on the presidential debate stage, fueling anti-black, anti-immigrant sentiments across the United States. I got like ferrets or something. Springfield has become a hotbed for xenophobic attacks which have threatened the lives of Haitian immigrant communities and their allies. Since Trump made his racist anti-immigrant tirade on national television, the Haitian community in Springfield has been living in fear. Residents, schools, and business owners have been subject to bomb and death threats. This use of fear-mongering has long been a legacy of racism and xenophobia that has perpetuated stereotypes against Haitians dating back to Haiti's independence in 1804. Approximately 15,000 Haitian immigrants have moved to Springfield in the past few years. Many come to Springfield seeking refuge, employment, and a stable environment to raise their families. They are faced with numerous challenges, including language barriers, increasing rents, and substandard housing. One Haitian man we spoke to pays $600 a month for his family of four to live in one room, where a hole in the ceiling pours in water when it rains. Affordable housing opportunities have diminished in Springfield as landlords have shifted towards market based rents to reap massive profits, all while Haitian immigrants and working class families suffer. Trump and Vance have blamed Haitian immigrants for the housing crisis in Springfield, but it is apparent that suspect management companies and predatory rent hikes are the source of these difficulties. Companies are buying up dozens of housing units and increasing rent prices, knowing that immigrant communities and other segments of the working class cannot afford to buy a home. Right wing politicians have similarly blamed Haitian immigrants for taking jobs and economic opportunities away from American citizens. In response to these accusations, one local business owner released a statement defending the Haitian community, which led him to receive death threats. In reality, Haitian immigrants have filled a significant gap in Springfield's labor force. Many are hired through temporary staffing agencies to work in manufacturing, supplying, and packaging distribution, often without health care or time off. Haitian immigrants have brought Springfield to life. In the words of one Haitian resident, quote, "When I got here 2 years ago, Springfield was dead, but after a little bit, the city started to grow. You can see a lot of business coming up. Houses that used to be dead, owners start to repair them and people start renting them. People start paying taxes to the country and the state. We contribute. Anywhere we put our feet, we work hard." End quote. In the face of this bigoted and racist attack on Haitian immigrants, the Springfield community and broader state of Ohio have come together to combat anti immigrant lies and support their neighbors. Allies seeking to show solidarity have not been deterred by death threats, nor by intimidation in the form of fascist groups Blood Tribe marching through Springfield on September 28. They should be called Tampon Tribe, but whatever. Continuing the article reading as follows: "We will not allow racist bigots like Trump and Vance to scapegoat Haitian community members for the real challenges the U.S. working class faces. As they line their pockets with profits earned from the blood and the sweat of immigrants, the Republicans and the rest of the capitalist class use immigration as a political campaign weapon. Kamala Harris vows to be even tougher on immigration than Trump by increasing border security and supporting the, quote, strongest and most lethal fighting force in the world, end quote. We demand an end to racist immigration policies, destabilization of Haiti backed by U.S. imperialism, and right-wing attacks on the working class of Springfield. It is critical for us to defend our neighbors and let them both Democrat and Republicans know that immigrants are welcome here. Hands off Haiti and the war on immigrants and solidarity forever." All right. So, uh, so let's talk about the immigrants and the rents, right? It's like how how dare you like blame poor people living one room at a family for the hiking rate prices of rent when this has been a national uh, hike of housing prices, whether it's rent or buying. We all know when immigrants get here, they don't buy a luxury apartment or a luxury condo or buy a mansion or a house or a full three-bedroom house. They usually all move into a studio apartment, like four at a time or so. I know because that's what my parents did when they got here. When we moved to Springfield, uh, well, not that Springfield, but another Springfield, uh, we were living a family of four in a small studio apartment until we were able to, until my parents had enough money to rent a bigger place. Uh, and in the case of Springfield, Ohio, uh, yeah, I mean, even the governor and the mayor in Ohio have explained that the Haitian community have uplifted the economy, have given them more, have created more jobs there, right? And that's not to say, oh yeah. So this was going to lead off to. I'm glad this like reminded me right away to the temp agencies. Like, dude, the temp agencies are trash. They shouldn't even exist. It should be a crime against humanity to have a temp agency. Like, you underpay your worker, but you pay a temp agency to take a chunk of the pay. That's horrible. It's like it's almost as bad as it's just as bad as the gig economy. Um, I remember being young and working at a temp agency, uh, and I remember recently being offered a job through a temp agency where I denied the role, and they offered me even more, which means the temp agency was taking a huge chunk of my pay. So yeah, temp agencies are bad. There should be more laws or policies created against temp agencies, uh, if not fully abolishing temp agencies. Uh, Yeah. So, and in regards to both parties uh, using immigration as a tactic for their elections, that just shows that they're both very bigoted, racist, systemically racist parties. And you shouldn't support either of them because what they like to do is they like to divide and conquer the working class so that the ruling class can take all the profit at the expense of the working class. And the working class is everybody pretty much except the 1%. Uh, okay, so those are my thoughts on that. Uh, Definitely reject Trump and Harris. I wouldn't vote for either of them. I don't plan on voting for either of them. They're both complicit in genocide, both complicit in funding the wars in Ukraine and Israel. I am not going to be complicit in funding Zionist war crimes. I am not going to be complicit in being a fascist. Okay, so I suggest neither should any of you. If you consider yourself decent human beings, humanitarians, egalitarianism, or just decent people overall. All right, solid article. Let's move along. Georgia biolab explosion. All right, I heard about this. Let's see here. Let's see. Georgia biolab explosion, another capitalist disaster. The photo is of smoke from the biolab facility, chemical fire. Credit screenshot from 6ABC to Philadelphia. Article by Bezaleel Jupiter, October 3rd, 2024. That's a busy day for them. All right, article reads as follows. On Sunday, September 29th, a chemical fire at the Georgia biolab facility exposed 17,000 people to toxic chemicals such as chlorine. Social media videos captured huge, thick clouds of smoke billowing over major highways as thousands of cars drove past. This is the third time that an occurrence like this has happened in the last 7 years at the biolab facility in Conyers, a suburb located east of Atlanta. The fire started that day around 5:30 a.m. It was caused by a sprinkler head malfunction, which caused whatever to come in contact with a water-reactive chemical, producing the plume and a small roof fire. This soon progressed to a massive smoke cloud, visible from the airport 30 miles away. But one sprinkler head malfunction does not tell the whole story. This is not the only time that the biolab facility in Conyers has exploded. Government officials and corporate media also continue to lie to and neglect people in range of the blast, providing little to no plans for evacuation or safety. Corporate media and government officials lied about evacuating 17,000 people. The day of the explosion, local and national media outlets reported that 17,000 people were evacuated out of Conyers. Sheriffs claimed that they knocked on doors to get people out of the blast zone. The local news mentioned several evacuation centers in surrounding counties. On Monday, September 30th, PSL organizers visited 3 designated, quote, evacuation sites, end quote, and found them to be nearly empty. One site, Wolverine Gym in Covington, which sat empty, had a paper sign hastily taped to the door instructing evacuees to move to a scout camp 30 minutes out, which also sat nearly empty. Outside the camp, our members talked to 2 men who were looking for an evacuation site. One of them, Reed Carr, said, quote, You'd read on the news that said we'd had 17,000, 19,000 refugees like heading towards this way to seek refuge, but then you just weren't really getting the feeling that that was actually true by the way the people were not leaving, end quote. Meanwhile, there are no barricades to stop people from going near the blast site, no assistance to help people evacuate from out of the blast site. Stephen Singleton described the scene as he left Conyers. Quote, We turned around in a little apartment complex and there were people out there outside like it was nothing. Nobody's telling them to stay inside. They literally had chlorine flakes falling from the sky in their backyard, end quote. Just like with Hurricane Helene, the local and national government has left the people of Conyers and much of Atlanta Metro to fend for themselves. Since the blast, low-hanging and stagnant chlorine particles will be pushed into surrounding counties in the eastern portions of Gwinnett and Walton County in the coming days. All over East Atlanta, fog envelopes the air, and residents described smelling chlorine as they stepped outside. Despite this, residents described only receiving any notification from the city government hours after already smelling the chlorine in the air Monday morning. Shut Biolab down. This is not the first time a fire of this magnitude erupted at Biolab, a producer of pool and lab products. Biolab is a subsidiary of KIK, Consumer Products, whose revenue spiked at $1.2 billion in 2023, yet it continues practices that leads to catastrophic explosions, evacuations, and pollution. A September 2020 reaction and decomposition with the chemical TCCA caused a plume of hazardous chemicals to be released into the air at the Conyers plant. Workers and 9 firefighters were exposed to, quote, dangerous fumes, end quote, according to a U.S. Chemical Safety and Hazard Investigation Board report. Businesses were evacuated and a section of I-20 was closed. A 2020 report on 2 fires at separate biolab locations by the U.S. Chemical Safety and Hazards Investigation Board found that, quote, the building in Conyers, Georgia, was not equipped with an automated water detector or alarm system to alert employees of a water leak, end quote. The same year, Hurricane Laura knocked out a Westlake, Louisiana biolab facility. The report found that biolab was extremely unprepared for the impacts of Hurricane Laura, despite going through a similar situation during a 2017 storm. It also found biolab was not following the necessary guidelines to protect its chemicals during storms like Laura. After the storm, biolab laid off 100 of its employees. Biolab rebuilt and expanded with a $16.7 million tax break rewarded by the Louisiana Board of Commerce and Industry in 2022. A chlorine leak occurred almost immediately after in March 2023. Reports found that since Hurricane Laura, only 12 of the 33 alert sirens were working to notify workers of these leaks. What we've seen from Biolab consistently is a complete lack of concern for the safety of its workers, the surrounding communities, or the planet. Catastrophic fires like these are preventable. They shouldn't be routine every few years. It is only because of the conscious choices of these billion-dollar companies that whole cities are evacuated and air and water supplies are polluted. And situations like these are not unique to Conyers or Biolab. Back in February 2023, the Norfolk Southern train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio, exposed residents to severe hazardous materials which continue to impact their health to this day. This was also an avoidable disaster, the result, among many factors, of Norfolk Southern's insistence on using the outdated .111 tank car and severely overworking their workers. In another example, a landfill in Alabama caught fire in 2023 as well. The supposedly, quote, green, end quote, landfill had been accepting hazardous materials such as old tires, asphalt, waste, and various construction debris, all of which is toxic to burn. The resulting fire leaked, quote, forever chemicals, end quote, linked to illness and birth defects into the local water supply. At the end of the day, the biolab explosion is not just a Conyers problem. It is not just a Georgia problem or a Louisiana problem. This is a problem for the capitalist system that puts profits over people. This is the reason that despite exploding multiple times across multiple locations, Biolab has not been shut down. At most, Biolab has just been fined to the tune thousands of dollars for a billion-dollar corporation, or has in fact been given tax breaks in order to rebuild but not actually improve their facilities. Local governments have rewarded Biolab for exposing nearby residents and workers to toxic chemicals. This is why Biolab must be shut down. But we can't just stop at shutting down Biolab, but we must fight for a system that ensures that there are stronger regulations in place for facilities that carry toxic chemicals like these. We need to make sure that these facilities are always from our working class communities we need to make sure that these facilities are away from our working class communities, they are regulated and they are nationalized so that they can be held to account by the people living nearby and the people working there. The system that ensures safety, accountability, and that something like this will never happen again would be a socialist system. This is why from Conyers to Lake Charles to East Palestine, we must fight for a better system for ourselves and our planet to live. Again, my quick analysis summary on this is always that, as I said, capitalism is a ghoulish system that rewards the most ghoulish ruling class at the expense of the people. They're polluting our water, our land, our air, uh, giving us cancer, chemicals, forever chemicals that produce cancers, produce birth defects, and then we're all over here, all over the world, wondering why we're getting weird cancers, why we're getting weird birth defects. Uh, this is the cost of capitalism, unfortunately, is a system that does not care about you. The ruling class, whether it was 10,000 years ago, whether it was during the serfs, the slaves, or now, uh, do not care about you. They just don't. They care about more greed and power. All right, so I'm going to leave that as that. I'm going to take a quick pause here, set up the next one. There's 3 more articles. I'll probably get through them. Let me check audio check 1, 2. Let me check. I'll be right back in a second. Let me check a message here. All right, I'm back, and I'm going to just move along. Actually, no, I'm going to take a quick break. I'll be right back. This will be just about a maybe 2-minute break max, so I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. Let's move along here. Let's see here. All right, next article title: On the ground at Claudia Sheinbaum's inauguration, Mexico continues the fourth transformation, by Michelle Zuno, October 3rd, 2024. This is a huge article. All right, let's get into this. The photo: massive crowd gathers for President Claudia Sheinbaum's inauguration ceremony. The photo is from at Claudia Shane. Do I have enough tea here? Do I have enough tea for this article? It's getting cold. All right, I'm gonna try to get through this. Maybe get some more hot tea. Uh, in the afternoon of October 1st in Mexico City's main square of Zocalo, a beautiful opening ceremony led by women representatives from 70 indigenous and Afro-American communities stole the crowd's attention. Each woman was welcomed to the stage with a stalk of a corn plant, a deeply important cultural symbol. The country's first woman president, Dr. Claudia Sheinbaum, was the last to be welcomed to the stage to receive the baton of command of the indigenous peoples. The ceremonial object presents political and spiritual authority. In addition, it symbolizes commitment to fully guarantee the right of all communities to equality under the law. Immediately after the ceremony, Dr. Sheinbaum gave her first address as president in front of a crowd of over 100,000 people, where she outlined the 100 commitments of her 6-year term. Abby Crystal, a woman in her 20s who traveled from the Mexican state of Tabasco, shared her motivations for her visit. Quote, "We are here today to witness this historic moment for all of us Mexicans, especially for all of us women. We are going to join the president in all of the tasks she's going to undertake, and we are going to extend our total support in the ongoing struggle for the fourth transformation. My expectation for her is to continue to abide by the 4T principles: not to lie, not to steal, and not to betray the people of Mexico. I am sure that she will fulfill it." End quote. The quote, fourth transformation, end quote, that Crystal refers to is the name of the process of progressive social and political reform that began with outgoing President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, popularly referred to as AMLO. Sheinbaum now has the responsibility of leading this process into its second stage. In her list of commitments, Sheinbaum promised to continue the work initiated by Obrador. She plans to expand on the social programs that currently exist for the poor, the youth, the elderly, and for all women. Crowd favorites included her commitments to put an end to the class discrimination, misogyny, the existence of nepotism in the government, and the destruction caused by decades of neoliberalism under prior administrations. Edith, who was born in the state of Colima and moved to Mexico City 50 years ago, shared her reflections. Quote, "I feel very satisfied with the past 6 years. It has been an ongoing struggle. We have been following this movement since its inception. We were fighting alongside the former president, AMLO, since the election fraud back in 2006. We were out in the streets, here in the main square, with him, and I'm here now because it's my conviction. I believed in AMLO's work, in what he promised, and in what he has achieved along the way. And I sincerely hope that Dr. Sheinbaum continues the work he started." End quote. The significance of the Morena victory. 35 million poor and working class people of Mexico made history on June 2nd. The country had two options: Schitz Galvez, a right-wing politician promising to reverse the progressive policies that AMLO implemented under his administration, or Dr. Claudia Sheinbaum, a lifelong activist and public official representing the continuation of the government led by the Morena Party, Movimiento Regeneración Nacional. The country's first progressive woman president has been elected to lead the country for the next 6 years. She prevailed with the highest vote total ever secured by a candidate in the history of Mexico's elections, sending a clear message. The people want to fortify the second stage of the fourth transformation. Hundreds of election observers, including this author, took part in an international delegation to witness and defend the country's electoral process on June 2nd. The international delegation included top political leaders from across the region, such as Venezuela's Jorge Arreaza and Bolivia's Evo Morales. The election observers witnessed hundreds of Mexican voters lining up in the early morning outside of the polling station to be the first to cast their votes. Mexican youth were present at every polling station that observers visited, and voters expressed the importance of participating in such a historic election. Polls projected Morena candidates to be in a strong position despite the horrific attacks against its militants leading up to the election day. The evening of the election, many of those participating in the delegation began to walk to El Zocalo. Hundreds of people walking in the same direction were in high spirits, chanting the proud waving Morena flags. Thousands of people were gathered in El Zocalo in front of a mass stage, waiting to welcome in the new president. Ranchera classics were played by a mariachi band, while many in the crowd sang along. There was Morena memorabilia everywhere. As midnight approached, it was confirmed that Dr. Sheinbaum won a sweeping victory, obtaining over 60% of the votes, the highest in the history of Mexican democracy. In the general election that transpired in 2006 and in 2012, Mexico's corporate media and right-wing elite carried out election fraud to prevent the progressive leadership from taking power. It was finally in 2018, when the popular mandate was so overwhelming that AMLO was able to come into office. To this day, he remains widely popular. So here's a picture here of a Mexican lady with classic Western clothing, where her sign saying, Tiempo de Mujeres es Claudia, consolidando la cuarta transformación, apoyo total. So she's saying she's in full support of Claudia Sheinbaum consolidating the fourth transformation, and she has total support. The picture description is as follows. At the inauguration ceremony, an attendee holds a sign reading, quote, the time of women, it's Claudia. Consolidate the fourth transformation, total support, end quote. Photo by Michelle Zuno. The inception of Morena. In just one decade, Morena has become the dominant political force in Mexico, effectively managing to wipe the PRI, Revolutionary Institutional Party, from the electoral map after holding uninterrupted power for 7 decades. Many Morena militants would argue that while the party was formally registered in 2014, it all began in 1994 in response to the inauguration of the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, and neoliberal policies introduced by former President Carlos Salinas de Gortari in 1991. AMLO, who became Mexico's city's head of government from 2000 to 2005, implemented social programs that laid the groundwork for his presidency. These included scholarships, pensions for the elderly, social housing, and aid to single mothers. In 2006, AMLO commenced his first presidential bid under the PRD, Party of the Democratic Revolution. His presidential bid faced strong opposition from the Conservative Party, PAN, National Action Party, and the corporate media, which succeeded in stealing the election. This injustice fueled the Obradista movement and continued resistance to neoliberal policies. Morena has always confronted many international and external challenges. While the movement is powered by the support of the masses of Mexican workers, it must still operate in an economy and state dominated by the capitalist class. There are sections of this capitalist class with Morena as well. This is a common dilemma faced by progressives and socialist government across Latin America. In the last 20 years, similar political forces have made great gains, but they have also suffered setbacks depending on international and domestic factors. AMLO and Morena have played an important role in Latin American regional politics, promoting solidarity and self-determination across the region. AMLO condemned the 2019 U.S.-backed coup attempt against the Venezuelan government and resisted the U.S.-dominated Organization of American States' attempts to intervene in Venezuela's July election. In Bolivia, AMLO not only denounced the 2019 right-wing coup against former Bolivian President Evo Morales, but also granted the socialist leader asylum, saving his life and paving the way for his eventual triumphant return home. AMLO has criticized the United States for its foreign intervention in countries as a way to weaken and subjugate them. For instance, he made a significant statement during the 2022 Summit of the Americas by refusing to attend the event, which was held in Los Angeles, California. His absence was a form of protest against the United States' decision to exclude the governments of Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua from the summit. AMLO argued that all nations in the Americas should be included to foster unity and called for the end of U.S. sanctions. In late August of this year, Mexico paused relations with the United States and Canada after they criticized AMLO's proposal for judicial reform as, quote, undemocratic, end quote. Obrador said the U.S., quote, has to learn to respect the sovereignty of Mexico, end quote. A couple of weeks following this statement, the Mexican Senate passed this reform, which would allow the Mexican people to elect all judges at all levels of government by a popular vote. Por el bien de todos, primero los pobres. While Morena continues to face many contradictions internally and externally, they have not had to deal with an oppositional legislature that stonewalls them from passive, progressive, anti-neoliberal legislation. The, quote, movement-style party, end quote, has been able to capture key electoral victories in both houses of Congress and forge a coalition with the Green Party and the Labor Party. This has allowed the government to enact major constitutional changes, unlike its progressive counterparts in Colombia and Peru, which both face a hostile legislative branch. Such a bloc can prevent progressive parties from achieving the commitments made to its people. When Morena won the presidency in 2018, it also won a qualifying supermajority in Congress that allowed it to implement constitutional changes. Accomplishments in this period include the passage of a pension plan, universal scholarships, and dramatic expansions to access to health care. This was a huge undertaking after decades of privatization, which prevented poor and working-class Mexicans from accessing basic necessities. AMLO's administration enacted significant minimum wage increases and reforms to labor laws aimed at protecting workers' rights. He was also able to make reforms in the education sector by guaranteeing free education from preschool to university to those who have been barred from it due to socioeconomic status under previous right-wing administrations. Later in 2022, AMLO enacted a reform in the pension system, increasing work pensions and reducing the number of weeks workers needed to contribute to access retirement benefits. In 2022, AMLO established the process of revocation of the presidential mandate organized by National Electoral Institute, INE, that allows voters to recall the president through a midterm referendum. As a test of his administration's strength, over 90% of voters supported AMLO in this referendum. Between 2021 and 2023, AMLO pushed for an overhaul of the country's energy sector, reversing neoliberal policies that privatized the industry and favored foreign companies. He gave state-owned energy companies such as Pemex, Oil, and the Federal Commissions of Electricity, CFE, more power. Such constitutional reforms have been faced with right-wing resistance, where some proposals have been partially blocked by or watered down by opposition parties and the judiciary. Morena faced localized losses in 2021 during the midterm elections, diminishing its power in Congress. Some of these losses are attributed to the opportunist sectors inside the party, which lost the trust of their base. Despite the setbacks, the fourth transformation retained majority support. President Sheinbaum's historic and record-breaking victory, Morena's success securing a supermajority in Congress once again, is an indication that the poor and working-class people of Mexico want to continue to see the process move forward. The photo is of President Sheinbaum with her newly appointed cabinet, Claudia, photo at Claudia Shane. it's a pretty cute picture. Everyone's all dressed all nicely. It's respectable, not over the top. President Sheinbaum's plans. All right, here's the juicy stuff. Article reads as follows. Continued, the scientist, public servant, 2007 Nobel Peace Prize winner, and longtime activist has vowed to deepen the, quote, fourth transformation, unquote, project inaugurated under AMLO. Before she took part in the Morena primaries, President Sheinbaum brought about a number of structural changes and took vital steps to improve the safety of women as head of government for Mexico City from 2018 to 2023. She strengthened laws against gender-based violence and established specialized units to combat femicide. New protocols and guidelines were introduced to improve the response to gender-based violence, ensuring better protection for women and children. Initiatives were also launched to improve job opportunities for women, and she promoted educational campaigns focused on gender equality and women's rights. President Sheinbaum's political involvement began in the student movement during her time at the National Autonomous University of Mexico, UNAM, where she studied energy and environmental engineering as a graduate student. Her research focused on sustainable development and environmental protection, which laid the basis for her public service career. When she served as Secretary of the Environment in the early 2000s for Mexico City, while AMLO was the mayor, she advanced environmental sustainability projects with an emphasis on improving public transportation. She continued the expanded on this work when she became the first woman elected mayor of Mexico City in 2018. During her term, she gave the key to the city to WikiLeaks founder and political prisoner Julian Assange. She has also spoken out against the blockade against Cuba and praised the advancements of the other left-wing governments in the region. In an exclusive interview with People's Dispatch and Breakthrough News in April 2023, she spoke about the significance of the fourth transformation. Quote, states have to give the rights to the people. Who do we think is a right? What do we think is a right? Education, health, a home, pension for all the elders. We also believe the strategic areas of the economy such as energy. The state has to be part of this, especially electricity, oil, and now lithium. It's important, and it's going to be very important in the future. You cannot have private investments measured only by GDP or international investments. You have to measure investments, public and private, in wealth for the people. And that's the big difference with neoliberalism that believed that everything was going to be solved by the market, end quote. After a month of winning the presidency in June, President Sheinbaum announced current pension plans would expand for elderly Indigenous and Afro-American women, with universal support by 2026. This policy represents a major step towards economic security. President Sheinbaum also plans to make scholarships universal for students in public schools, starting with secondary students in 2025. Let me repeat that. President Sheinbaum also plans to make scholarships universal for students in public schools, starting with secondary students in 2025. The Universal Scholarship Program aims to break the cycle of poverty. Education scholarships were available, but Sheinbaum is working to make them universal and accessible to all students in public schools. In the 100 commitments outlined in her inauguration address, she prioritized the needs of the poor and the working class over the elite. She also mentioned that she will defend the country's sovereignty and democracy from any outside interference. Quote, AMLO brought back the dignity of our country, end quote. She stated, quote, and we will never give it up again, end quote. The struggle ahead. AMLO and Morena have shifted the ideological terrain of the country. However, the balancing act of delivering progressive reforms for the poor in the context of a capitalist economy continues to be a main contradiction for the movement to grapple with. At the same time, challenges within the party inevitably arise as it is a broad movement that encompasses different class forces with competing political orientations, including sectors of the bourgeoisie that are a break on more radical proposals. As Morena develops, it is moving towards greater ideological unity with instruments like the National Institute of Political Formation, or INFP, which has graduated over 200,000 militants. All INFP graduates are trained in political theory, including revolutionary Marxist thought. The Left Wing Institute was formed following AMLO's 2018 victory to consolidate and strengthen the activist core of the party. Following the general election, the author of this article participated in a week-long program led by the Institute's young militants, who are openly socialist and anti-imperialist. The week-long program included courses on the history of the Morena Party, a lively lecture by the Institute's president Rafael, quote, El Fiscón, end quote, Barajas, a workshop on popular education, and a book launch presentation on the book, quote, ¿Qué es más América Latina hoy? End quote, with author Marco Teruggi. The Institute is a massive campus-like space that provides political education, programming for Morena Party members and the general public. Inside the Institute are beautiful murals, an enlarged Antonio Gramsci quote, a library room with leftist books, including those written and published by INFP, a painting of Emiliano Zapata, large classrooms, a lecture hall to host events and panels, and a Palestinian flag to show the Institute's unwavering solidarity. President Sheinbaum and Morena face immense challenges, continuing to undo the decades of neoliberal policies challenging the entrenched power of U.S. corporate interests and empowering the working class majority. This will require tremendous collective efforts and struggle. And so that was an awesome article. I'm not going to add anything to this article because it was so in depth, except that I have full support. I fully support Claudia and hope that she's a shining beacon as to what leftism can be in the future. Not to mention that she is also of Jewish descent, but she's a great supporter of Palestine. I don't have full details. Like I don't know if she supports a two-state, a one-state solution. I personally support a one-state solution. Israel should not exist. That's just my personal opinion, and I'm sticking to it. It is a military state. It is a colonization state. It is a terror state, and yeah, it should go the way of the Nazis. They should be abolished or dissolved for the sake of humanity and of the people in the Middle East. And I hope for the best here in Mexico. It's interesting how Mexico has gone through this transformation, which is a transformation that very slowly a lot of South American countries are starting to go through. Uh, Venezuela was actually one of the biggest trailblazers for it, along with Cuba for sure was one of the biggest trailblazers on it. Uh, Peru tried, but it was so entrenched with corruption that they just couped and took Castillo out from the inside, and now they have their full sock puppet, who is his vice president. But the Peruvian Peru Libre, which is a Free Peru party, uh, they're new. They're only 16 years old, and they were able to Cerrón, their head, I guess, their head coordinator, was able to get Castillo elected, which means there's a mass mobilization in Peru. There's a mass awakening that they're realizing that there's something very wrong with capitalism. At least the working class, the poverty class of the working class in Peru realizes. And I think it's going to happen again. I think it's going to be a slow transformation, but I think that's the direction that Peru's going into, because there's a clear distinction in Peru between the have and the have-nots, the poor and the ruling class. I also think that people like Milei are also going to project a big backlash effect that will have will produce more progressive parties, more leftist parties, and elect more leftists. So I don't think the Peruvian capitalists are in the clear, or the ruling class are in the clear. They're just buying time for what's the inevitable. And Peru will be going the way of, say, Mexico or Venezuela, or in its own form eventually, once the people start realizing that there's a better way. And Mexico is a great example of that right now. Okay, next up, been getting too many touches here. All right, little frosty. You know what? Yeah, I can read this. Let's go. Let's do it. Uh, this article is called. Let me check the audio again, since it's been a second. Audio check 1 2 1 2. Everything's great. All right. Article titled Hurricane Helene Disasters Zone. Disaster Zone. Socialists provide relief. Capitalist government provides nothing. Article by Liberation Staff, October 4th, 2024. The photo, the aftermath of Hurricane Helene in Asheville, North Carolina. Credit Wikimedia Commons. Article reads as follows. Fueled by the hot Gulf waters, a direct result of climate change, Hurricane Helene moved rapidly inland, where it dumped enormous amounts of rain into southern Appalachia, causing catastrophic flooding and unmanageable devastation. Over 200 people are confirmed dead as a result of the storm, and the death toll is expected to rise. Hundreds are still unaccounted for. Amid all this devastation, many people have not seen any government response from FEMA or any other relief agencies. Hours after the storm hit, volunteers were on the ground in parts of Florida and Georgia distributing water, food, diapers, cleaning supplies, and more. In St. Petersburg, Florida, we were invited to tour flooded apartments, where community members shared their experience with the storm and aftermath. Joseph Kennedy, a lifelong resident, said he'd never seen flooding like this. Quote, I lost everything I had. My truck's down. Everything in my apartment was destroyed. I don't know when I am going to be able to go back to work. And I believe something has to be done. End quote. He added, quote, the only thing that's going to change is when the government changes and does what they need to do and put the money in the right places. End quote. Members in southern Appalachia responded rapidly to the conditions on the ground, from rescuing and housing a stranger who was caught in the floodwaters to organizing neighborhood meetings. As soon as the path opened into eastern Tennessee and western North Carolina, PSL members from neighboring branches began bringing in supplies and support to assist with relief efforts. We put special focus on bringing in drinking water, even renting a flatbed truck to deliver more, because so many people were desperate and some had resorted to drinking hazardous water from nearby creeks. Cody Cardell, an organizer with PSL Asheville, reflects on the relief work they have been carrying out. Quote, the community aid is something we need to continue to support, but it's a drop in the bucket. What we need is more government assistance. We need FEMA assistance. We need the federal government to step up and to do its job. You know, we have seen a level of response from both federal and state governments, but that response hasn't been bringing in aid. It has been bringing in police. I have seen police from Charlotte Louisiana, from Atlanta, all this manpower wasn't sent in to distribute supplies or to clear the roads or even direct traffic. It was sent in to make sure hungry people, thirsty people, desperate people couldn't get the supplies they needed. Those police and the private security, which we saw guarding grocery stores, could have helped with distributing supplies instead, but that's not what they're doing. End quote. While carrying out this relief work, we have heard from dozens of community members who all share a similar sentiment. The government has abandoned us. When a crisis hits, poor and working class people are left to suffer. The model for disaster preparedness in the United States is, quote, every man for himself, end quote. Ahead of Helene, officials declared storm warning and evacuation orders in part of the region, but for many areas, these orders came too late, if they came at all. Furthermore, there are no centralized and systemic plans to temporarily relocate people to safety. Instead, most people must rely on their own resources to evacuate. Anybody without a reliable car, adequate gas money, or sufficient mobility is out of luck. From travel expenses to lost wages, the cost of evacuating can be enormous, especially at a time of high housing and food prices. Federal, state, and local leaders have refused to take responsibility for disasters preparedness. In addition to evacuation, they could offer programs to help the poor, elderly, and disabled sandbag and board up their homes. They could ensure every household has adequate supplies to ride out the storm. They could invest in better infrastructure to adjust for the threats of storm surges and flash floods, threats that will only grow as the climate continues to change. Common sense initiatives like these are possible and are already carried out in socialist Cuba. Instead, they abandon vulnerable people, insisting again upon an individual survival mindset. Quote, the first 72 are on you, end quote. While the government has abandoned people to fend for themselves, working class people like us always come together to organize aid networks for each other. However, this aid is only a tiny drop in the bucket compared to the scale of what is needed. The government has the power and the resources to fully address this crisis and must act now. In fact, as Hurricane Helene approached, lawmakers allowed billions of dollars to be stripped from disaster funding, all while FEMA is facing a multi-billion-dollar deficit and is unable to provide for rebuilding projects. These same lawmakers are able to build bipartisan support for sending billions of dollars to Israel to fund a genocidal war drive, but draw the line at disaster relief. To add insult to injury, some officials are scapegoating immigrants seeking asylum for the budget shortfall. This tired and racist divide and conquer rhetoric will not work. Instead of excuses and inaction, officials must fully fund FEMA to cover the cost for people's needs without delay. We demand immediate assistance to ensure the people get clean water, food, medicine, shelter, and transportation now. This must be coupled with long-term assistance to fully rebuild our communities, including the rural communities, which are often forgotten. And we demand immediate and comprehensive action on climate change, which is fueling storms like these. Use our tax money to fund people's needs, not the war machine. All right, totally based article. Totally legit thought process here, which is a very leftist leaning thought process on how the means should be distributed. Also, a philosophically moral basis on how people should be treated. Also, on why products must be distributed equally or efficiently to people in need. Let me hold my thought here on this process. Yeah, they were talking about how the government is not supporting the people adequately, but the working class activists are supporting the people if possible. My thought process to this is that if we had an actual leftist party with power in the United States, that leftist party would not just be a party, but it would be a mobilizing force to force to pressure the government and to mobilize people to help each other, like in a community, as it should be, right? Sort of like the big Morena plan in Mexico right now. That's going through its second phase of its four-phase project. Uh, yes, and of course, because of demographics, uh, these plans are going to differ a little bit. But right now, what we see is a government that only moves uh, at lightning speed to distribute money and resources for its wars to maintain empirical power and to benefit the ruling class, but it does not move as quickly to uh, act preventively to help the people, the working class in America. All right, moving along to what I believe might be the last article for today. No, there's actually two more articles, but let's see here. This one's short, so let's get through this one. Article reads, Sudanese Communist Party statement. We condemn the RSF attack on Mohiuddin al-Jalad. Al-Halad. Article by Sudanese Communist Party, October 4th, 2024. The photo is of the Sudanese Communist Party supporters. Credit Sudanese Tribune. Article reads, the Party for Socialism and Liberation condemns this violent attack on a central leader of the Sudanese Communist Party and all repression directed against progressive and democratic forces in Sudan. Sudanese Communist Party Secretariat of the Central Committee press statement. On the evening on Tuesday, October 1st, 2024, at around 1 a.m., the home of Comrade Muhyiddin al-Halad, or is al-Jalad, I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure it's Halad. A member of the Central Committee of the Sudanese Communist Party was targeted by the individuals wearing Rapid Support Forces (RSF) uniforms. When he confronted them, they shot him, injuring his left leg. He is still undergoing treatment. The attack on his home was repeated the next day, Wednesday, October 2nd, 2024, at around 11:30 p.m., and his home was looted. The attackers were wearing RSF uniforms, and one of them claimed to be an intelligence commander in the RSF. We condemn this crime and warn against targeting members and leaders of the Communist Party, political forces, and activists and resistance committees and services in areas controlled by both warring parties aim to settle political scores under the cover of the war. We call for the broadest possible local and international solidarity to denounce this crime, protect civilians, political forces, unions, and resistance committee members, and service workers. We demand accountability for war criminals and urge continued mobilization to build the broadest grassroots popular front to stop the war and reclaim the revolution. Secretariat of the Central Committee of the Sudanese Communist Party. All right. So when you are going, other than civil war, where you have to like defend yourself through arms, uh, the biggest tool the working class have is their labor power. Once the working class is united and they stop work through general strikes, they will actually have the control to seize the means of production or to move government to actually mobilize to represent the working class. Uh, these kinds of attacks are attacks of reactionary people that actually do not have uh, the mentality or the education to understand this. So, yeah, I support this statement condemning these kinds of attacks. Uh, what we need is more working class solidarity, which means education, organizing, and mobilization of the working class. Two, seize the means. Uh, First, by peaceful means, and as a last resort, by defensive means if necessary. All right, so this article just dropped today. It's a short 4-minute read uh, called the Texas article title, Texas Pregnancy Deaths up 56% since abortion ban. All right, this is a very important article. Um, I mean, just the headline alone is a lot of info to take in. Texas pregnancy deaths up 56% since abortion bans. That's almost like saying that out of uh, that's almost, let's see, that's saying like if before you had 10 pregnancy deaths, it's up to like 15 to 16 pregnancy deaths now. So an additional 5 to 6 women. Uh, yeah, so out of 100, 56 more women are dying now. All right, so article by Catherine Haberl, October 6, 2024. Article well, let me describe the picture. It's people protesting abortion on demand, Party for Socialism and Liberation, My Body, My Choice, abortion is a right, defend Roe v. Wade. And the article reads as follows: 2 years after the overturning of Roe v. Wade and 3 years since the implementation of Texas SB 8, quote, bounty, end quote, bill in 2021, the facts on the ground are showing exactly what activists expected: a massive increase in deaths of both mothers and infants. The Gender Equity Policy Institute reports a 56% increase in pregnancy-related deaths, defined as the loss of life due to complications related to pregnancy or aggressive or aggravated by pregnancy-related conditions. In Texas, between 2019 and 2022, while the national statistics increased by 11% during the same time frame, this represents a significant spike in the already troubling trend of rising pregnancy-related mortality in the state. Texas is also seeing troubling trends in infant death and infant health. Recent analysis found that infant mortality rates in Texas increased by 13% following the passage of SB 8. In 2022 alone, the state had 2,240 infant deaths, up from 1,985 the previous year. Much of this increase can be attributed to a rise in deaths caused by congenital anomalies, fatal conditions that could have been addressed if abortion services were available. Between 2021 and 2022, Texas saw a significant rise in infant deaths due to congenital anomalies, increasing by 22.9%. This stands in stark contrast to the rest of the U.S., where there was a 3.1% decrease in such deaths over the same period. In short, SB 8 has exacerbated the crisis already presented in the Texas healthcare system, where people are now being forced to continue high-risk pregnancies to term, often with limited access to prenatal healthcare, especially in rural areas, and while facing a rise in chronic conditions like hypertension and diabetes, which contribute to pregnancy complications. In many cases, people are being forced to carry pregnancies for several months, despite knowing that these pregnancies are unlikely to result in the birth of healthy babies. Quote, for each of these pregnancies, that's a pregnant person who had to stay pregnant for an additional 20 weeks, end quote, explained Dr. Erica Warner, chair of obstetrics and gynecology at Tufts Medical Center in an interview with NBC News. This prolonged period not only risks the mother's health, but also adds emotional trauma to an already devastating situation. While Republicans spearheaded SB 8, passing it under the pretext of protecting life, the outcomes reveal the policy's destructive anti-life nature. People in Texas are being denied access to life-saving medical care, and the rising rates of pregnancy-related deaths show just how deadly these so-called, quote, pro-life, end quote, policies have been. Republican lawmakers continue to pursue their ideological agenda, showing little regard for the human cost of their decisions. On the other hand, Democrats have also failed to protect reproductive rights, despite controlling both Congress and the White House from 2020 to 2022. They took no significant action to safeguard abortion rights at the federal level. Many within the party have used the issue of abortion as a way to rally support or cynically raise millions of dollars in campaign funding without implementing concrete legislative solutions to enshrine abortion access in law. This failure highlights how both major political parties serve only their own interests and those of the ruling class, rather than those of working people. Reproductive rights are treated as a bargaining chip or a right-wing culture war hot button, rather than a medical necessity, and both Republicans and Democrats have exploited this issue for political gain. In light of this growing crisis, it's clear that small policy reforms will not suffice. The people need unrestricted reproductive health care to prevent further increases in maternal and infant mortality. Universal access to abortion service is crucial for improving these outcomes, particularly in states like Texas, where restrictive laws are exacerbating the crisis. Donald Trump has vacillated on the issue of abortion, recognizing that the rights abortion bans are extremely unpopular, but not wanting to alienate a part of his base which supports these bans. Kamala Harris is promising to, quote, restore, end quote, Roe v. Wade, but this is not enough. Even before the overturning of Roe, right-wing laws and the anarchy of the free market had made abortion inaccessible for millions of women by the creation of barriers of cost and restrictive regulation that drove providers out of business. As a staunch opponent of socialized medicine, an example, Medicare for All, Harris' best case scenario for abortion access would still leave millions of uninsured, underinsured, or poor and rural people without any abortion access. But that assumes Harris even intends to follow through on this promise, despite refusing to act, protect, or codify abortion access any time during the last 4 years. In contrast, the campaign of Claudia de la Cruz and Karina Garcia offers a transformative solution that meets the scale of the problem, that, quote, abortion should be available without restriction and provided for free to the women, and all people have the right to control their own bodies, end quote. Unlike the Republicans or Democrats who believe that the free market, quote, free market, end quote, monopolistic corporations should govern who receives health care, the Claudia Karina campaign is demanding that the largest 100 corporations, including pharmaceutical giants, be seized and put under public control for the public good. However, the outcome in November, we should ask, how can lasting change be achieved? The answer is mass mobilization. Working class people must unite in demanding not just the restoration of abortion rights, but a complete overhaul of the healthcare system. We must fight for a socialist system that values public well-being and health care for all, which is essential to securing reproductive freedom and ensuring that every person has control over their own body. Only through collective action can we win a future in which health care is a universal right and human lives are valued over corporate profit. All right, I don't even have to add to this article either because the data is there. Uh, I can reread the data. The Gender Equity Policy Institute reports that a 56% increase in pregnancy-related deaths, defined as the loss of life due to complications related to pregnancy or aggravated by pregnancy-related conditions in Texas between 2019 and 2022, while the nation's statistic increased by 11% during the same time frame. This represents a significant spike in the already troubling trend of rising pregnancy-related mortality in the state. The solution, as stated here, is the Claudia de la Cruz and Karina Garcia plan, which offers a transformation solution that meets the scale of the problem, that abortion should be available without restrictions and provided for free so that women and all people have the right to control their own bodies, unlike the Republican or Democrats who believe that the free market monopolistic corporations should govern who receives health care. The Claudia Karina campaign is demanding that the largest 100 corporations, including pharmaceutical giants, be seized and put under public control for the public good. That's right. So the working class would control it for the benefit of the working class, not the billionaires and the ruling class that just want to siphon your money at the expense of your life. And as mentioned here, the Democrats or Republicans did nothing to prevent this issue. Instead, they have worked together to exacerbate it So why should you vote for people that don't care about you? Just don't. And if you don't want to vote fully for a fully socialist program party like Claudia de la Cruz, look into Justine's program, which is also a far left program, but still works under the banner of reforming capitalism, uh, which is never a finite solution, which is never a final solution, because capitalism just tends to always lean towards the right, towards the ruling class. Okay, but it's better than voting for two genocidal ghouls that aren't doing anything for the working class. So these are the articles for today. I will do a refresh, and I see here that there are no new articles for today. But I have not much else to add except have an excellent weekend.